Welcome to ISKCON of Silicon Valley. Happy to be here with everyone tonight, and looking forward to reading a few pages from the Nectar of Devotion and having some discussion on this seminal work of Rupa Goswami. Fairly soon, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu will be released from the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. It's been a long time coming. Bhanu Swami has a translation, but it needed significant editing and so forth. Editors are not so easy. Sanskrit editors and so forth, not so easy to come by. In any case, we're anticipating that. And Nectar of Devotion is perhaps our most important book on devotional service, as we are called Rupanugas, or followers of Rupa Goswami. And in this book, he gives the complete explanation of the science of Krishna consciousness. So let's sing the Shad Goswami Ashtakam, because this is a song that glorifies the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. It gives an idea of what their attitude was in life. You don't have a cold, do you? Oh my God. Yeah, right. I hope so. Krishna Kirtana Gana Nartana Paro Premamritambo Nidhi Dhira Dhira Jana Priya Priyakaro Nirmatsaro Pujito Shri Chaitanya Kripa Bara Bhuvi Bhuva Paravahantarako Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Nana Shastra Vichara Naika Nipuno Sadharma Samstapako Lokanam Hitakarino Tribhuvane Manyo Sharanyakaro Radha Krishna Padara Vinda Bhajana Nandena Mataliko Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Shri Gauranga Gunarnuvarnana Vidam Shraddha Samriddhyan Vitao Papo Tapa Nikrintanau Tanubritam Govinda Ganamritai Anandam Buddhivardhanaika Nipunau Kaivalya Nishtarako Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Tyaktva Turnama Shesha Mandalapati Shrenin Sadatu Chavat Bhutvadina Ganesha Kau Karunaya Kaupina Kanta Shritao Gopi Bhavara Samritabdi Lahari Kalola Magno Mahu Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Kujat kokila hangsa sara sagana Kine mayura kule Nana ratna nibada mula vitapa Shri yukta vrindavane Radha Krishna Maharnisham Prabhajata Jivarta doyo mudha Vande rupa sanatano raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Sankhya Purvaka Namagana Natibi Kalavasani Kritao Nidrahara Vihara Kari Vijito Chatyanta Dino Chayo Radha Krishna Gunasmiter Madhurima Nandena Samohito Vande rupa sanatano raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Radha Kunda Tate Kalinda Tanaya Tire Chavam Shivate Premon Maravashara Shesha Dashaya Grastau Brahmato Sada Gayanto Chakadaharer Gunavaram Bhava Vibhuto Mudha Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Hey Radhe Vraja Devike Chilalite Hey Nanda Suno Kutaha Shri Govardhana Kalpa Patale Kalindi Vanye Kuta Goshanta Viti Sarvato Vrajapure Keder Mahavivalo Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Go Premanande Nitai Goda Haribo 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 Nitai Goda Haribo Let's look at some of the translations. Because this is a song written by Srinivasacharya. And he's naming all of the 6 Goswamis, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are always engaged in chanting the holy name of Krishna and dancing. They are just like the ocean of love of God, and they are popular both with the gentle and the ruffians, because they're not envious of anyone. Whatever they do, they are all pleasing to everyone, and they are fully blessed by Lord Chaitanya. Thus, they are engaged in missionary activities meant to deliver all the conditioned souls in the material universe. And we'll find in the very beginning of the Nectar Devotion, as we go into it, that one of the qualities of the practice of pure devotional service is that it is all auspicious. And the meaning of all auspiciousness is that one is able to do good for all living entities. There are ways in which people do philanthropic work, and they may do good for a certain section of the society, a certain species, and it may exclude others. In fact, it may do harm to others. But when one is able to do all good for all kinds of living entities everywhere, one is known to be all auspicious. And another aspect of this translation that is notable is just that they were popular both with the gentle and the ruffians because they're not envious of anyone. And when I have a vested interest and I want something from someone because I want to satisfy my senses, then there's a natural way in which I have friends and enemies, because some people may be facilitating my sense gratification, whether it's fame or adoration or distinction or some kind of natural resources that I want. And other people may be facilitating that. And based on who's facilitating, who's restricting, I decide who's a friend and who's an enemy. But when someone has no vested interest in the material world, he or she is free to interact with others on a non-envious basis and not consider that they're friends or enemies. They have nothing to gain from others because they're getting everything by naturally engaging in Krishna's service. And in the Gita, Krishna says, Ananyashchintayanto mam yejana paripasate tesham nityabdyuktanam yogakshemam bahamyaham. When somebody is exclusively devoted to me, Krishna says, then I personally take care of that person. And he or she doesn't want for anything. And the next translation says that the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan studied all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. So this is what acharyas do, as they show a clear path so that everyone can follow. And this is something that is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that when the great souls establish a path so that they can follow it, they also leave that path behind so that other people can follow it. And simply by following the path set by the great souls, Mahatkritena, then one can easily cross over the ocean of material existence. So you'll notice that Prabhupada sacrificed his sleep to write books that were relevant to people in this time and in this age, so that they could follow a path of devotional service. And that is the generational work that the acharyas do. So thus they are honored all over the 3 worlds. Where is a statement like that in the prayers that we sing every morning at ISKCON temples? They're honored all over the 3 worlds. Abhiyash Kushu Tribhuvana. Such a soul becomes honored all over the 3 worlds. And Prabhupada noted it when he went back to India the first time with his Western disciples, and he took them to Sharat, and the devotees were chanting and kirtan going down the street. People were coming out of their shops and their homes offering garlands, flowers, and they were gathering up the dust, and there and also in Bengal, from the road where these devotees had walked, and putting it on their heads and bodies. And Prabhupada commented later that because you're following strictly the exalted path, therefore you're being honored all over the 3 worlds by the most pious souls in the world, but they'll honor somebody who's following the path of devotional service. So anyone can follow in the footsteps of the great acharyas to his or her own capacity, and by doing so, such a person will also be honored throughout the 3 worlds. That's not their objective, obviously, but it's just a fact. And number 3, that the Goswamis were very much enriched in understanding Lord Chaitanya, and they're expert in narrating his transcendental qualities. They purify all conditioned souls from the reactions of their sinful activities by pouring upon them transcendental songs about Govinda. As such, they are very expert in increasing the limits of the ocean of transcendental bliss and are the saviors of the living entities from the devouring mouth of impersonal liberation. This is the panacea, this pouring the transcendental vibration into the lives of people. Who I was just in New York City, actually just came back, And while we were there, I remembered something about New York. I had lived there for 3 years at one point in the 340 West 55th Street Temple. One of the features of the New York ashrams is you can walk out the door, or you can go anywhere in New York and do Sankirtan, because it's open 24 hours a day, and it's unlimited. There are unlimited numbers of people. It's a microcosm of the whole world, New York. So just after Bhagavatam class, the first day, we just walked right out the door and went around the block and did Harinam Sankirtan, and even walked in a few shops. And we noticed right away the contrast between the energy of the devotees who had been at Mangal Artik, and then we had been in Bhagavatam class, chanted 16 rounds, and then we were chanting Harinam. And we more or less burst out the door in a kind of, the devotees are with me, not me, but radiance from those devotees. And then we went down the street chanting Hare Krishna, and we noticed that some people were, well, most people had their head down, their earbuds in, and they were heading for work out of obligation, and had a sort of stoic look on their face. And there was a great contrast between that and the joyful chanting of the holy names by the devotees going down the street and so forth. But there was a sense that we had so many people looked up and smiled, and even they invited us into their shops. So, not exactly, but we kind of, they didn't mind. And I was very conscious of this sense of pouring out the transcendental songs about Govinda as something that is extremely joyful when it bounces off the walls and intercepts people on their way to work and so forth. You just absolutely feel joyful to be a part of it. And this is something the Goswamis of Vrindavan gave us, this process. Number 4 says that the Goswamis had been involved in high society, and they were ministers in the government, were Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. Some came from very wealthy families, very exalted Brahmana families and so forth. And they all saw that the grass was greener on the other side, enjoyed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, easily gave up the insignificant life that they were involved in before. And this is a very natural phenomena, and that is that when one worships Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, at some point will arise in the heart this feeling that the material world is insignificant, and that I don't want to waste my breath so much with endeavoring for maintaining a standard of existence, and that one takes full shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Of course, all the devotees who were around Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were mostly grihastas, and they had various occupations. Murari Gupta was a doctor, and others were teachers and so forth. And they went on with their occupations, but they fully absorbed themselves in service to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Number 5 is about Vrindavan. And the Goswamis went to Vrindavan and they revealed the places of Krishna's pastimes. And it describes here the beauty and opulence of Vrindavan. It's the place of Madhurya. It's so sweet. Has the sweetness of the charming relationship that everyone has with Krishna, either as a friend or as a mother or father or a lover. And everyone's thinking about Krishna all day long. And number 6 says that the Goswamis were engaged in very strict practice of devotional service. And Prabhupada describes how in the beginning, when you're learning to type, you follow the typing book very carefully. And you think where you're going to put your fingers on the keys. But later on, it just becomes natural. And in a similar way, when we're performing the initial stages of devotional service and practice, we may, by force, perform the activities because we have a sense of duty and we have faith in the Shastra, even if we don't have a full taste. And this is a jata ruchi raganuga sadhana bhakti. It means the taste hasn't awakened yet, but still we're practicing out of a sense that we're following the Goswamis. And as we do that, then naturally we'll develop a taste for the hearing and chanting and the whole process of devotional service. Number 7 says that the Goswamis were in various places around Vrindavan, like the Jamuna and Radhakund, and they were always feeling separation from Krishna. Prabhupada mentions how it's not that they were connected, seeing Krishna all the time, but there's a higher sentiment than when they're feeling separation from the Lord and always searching after Him. So that was their consciousness, merged in ecstasy in Vrindavan. And number 8 describes how they would go about Vrindavan looking for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and seeing the Jamuna, seeing Govardhan, they would be stimulated. These are udipanas, or stimuli for the love of Krishna. When the residents of Vrindavan went to Dwarka to see Krishna, which is now celebrated as Ratha Yatra, they said to Krishna, we don't want to see you here as a king in Dwarka with soldiers around you and a crown on your head. We want to see you in Vrindavan with the backdrop of the Jamuna and Govardhan Hill, because they don't feel the same relationship with Krishna unless they're there in Vrindavan. So the Goswamis are quintessentially presenting to us the mood of Vrindavan and the kind of devotional service that takes place in Vrindavan, which is spontaneous devotional service for Krishna, where Krishna's Aishvarya, or his opulence as being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is suppressed. And therefore, they simply engage in loving devotional pastimes with Krishna 24 hours a day. And this is the path that we're following in the footsteps of the Goswamis of Vrindavan. And those who wish to follow that path expertly can read the Nectar of Devotion, the summary study of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and understand the framework of the philosophy and also the details of what a relationship with Krishna is like. Not only that, there are so many vignettes and descriptions of Krishna compiled within this book that are extremely charming, talking about Krishna's qualities and his relationship with various devotees and things that he said at various times. So you'll be enthralled as you read the Nectar of Devotion and continue to hear from it. I offer my respectful obeisances to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and to all of you, because you are Vaishnavas and therefore are the most worshipable in the 3 worlds. Hare Krishna. So in the Nectar Devotion, seeing the table of contents, you have a preface and an introduction. And then part 1 starts with the first 3 chapters: characteristics of pure devotional service, the first stages of devotion, and eligibility of the candidate for accepting devotional service. And here in the preface of Nectar Devotion, Srila Prabhupada writes, the Nectar Devotion is a summary study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which was written in Sanskrit by Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada. So listen carefully and then you can reflect. He was the chief of the 6 Goswamis, who were the direct disciples of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When he first met Lord Chaitanya, Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada was engaged as a minister in the Mohammedan government of Bengal. He and his brother Sanatan were then named Dabir Kash and Shakara Malik, respectively, and they held responsible posts as ministers of Nawab Hussain Shah. At that time, 500 years ago, the Hindu society was very rigid, and if a member of the Brahmana caste accepted the service of a Mohammedan ruler, he was at once rejected from Brahmana society. That was the position of the 2 brothers, Dabira Kas and Sakara Malik. They belonged to the highly situated Saraswata Brahmana community, but they were ostracized due to their acceptance of ministerial posts in the government of Hussain Shah. It is a grace of Lord Chaitanya that he accepted these two exalted personalities as his disciples and raised them to the position of Goswamis, the highest position of Brahminical culture. Similarly, Lord Chaitanya accepted Haridas Thakur as his disciple, although Haridas happened to be born in a Mohammedan family. And Lord Chaitanya later on made him the Acharya of the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Lord Chaitanya's principle is universal. Anyone who knows the science of Krishna and is engaged in the service of the Lord is accepted as being in a higher position than a person born in the family of a Brahmana. That is the original principle accepted by all Vedic literatures, especially by Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. The principle of Lord Chaitanya's movement in educating and elevating everyone to the exalted post of a Goswami is taught in the Nectar of Devotion. Please reflect. A few points that you heard. And the microphones are ready to go, I hope. Purna is ready, but she has no microphone. This is a sad state of affairs. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
I wanted to reflect on the line when Prabhupada writes that Lord Chaitanya's movement is universal. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not stop anyone to join the Krishna conscious movement, irrespective of their backgrounds. So even though the Goswamis and Haridas Thakur, they actually were related from the Muslim backgrounds, not the Goswamis but Haridas Thakur, Lord Chaitanya accepted them. So I was listening a lecture by Prabhupada, and he was giving the example of universities, that if a person graduates from a university, no one asks their background as long as they are qualified in a particular subject. So in the same way, if someone is learned in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it doesn't matter what is their background.
Excellent. Very nice point. It backed up nicely. Is everyone comfortable? We have Zafus in the back too if anybody needs them, and there's also chairs. Please be as comfortable as possible. Okay, a couple more reflections.
I just noticed that back then in the 15th century, there seemed to be some strict Brahmana caste in place, and I'm just wondering if that's genuine or if it was kind of just based on the book but not really based on people's real experience. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, so much of it was based on just the phenomena that happens very frequently in any religious system, is that the priestly caste takes the monopoly because they're really getting a lot of respect and payment from their services, and they don't like to empower other people. So we find Brahmanas in the history of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at that time who were very much attached to karmakanda rules and regulations without understanding the essence behind them. And even up to the time of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, which is very recent, and even our Srila Prabhupada, we found that people that had even no qualifications as Brahmanas but were born in Brahmana families would object to, for instance, Prabhupada coming to America and initiating people and turning them into Brahmanas, which is, as is being mentioned here, the system that is in the Bhagavat Marg and the Panchratchik system, in which people are purified by the process of chanting the holy name of the Lord and become eligible to be more than Brahminical status, because if one is a Vaishnava, then Brahminical status is also included. As Devahuti says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Aho batashva pachato gariyanya jiva gre vartate namatubhyam te pusta paste juhuvu sasna arya brahmana churnama grananti yete. Oh, how wonderful it is. She said that if somebody's chanting the holy name of the Lord, they become purified even to the point of being eligible to perform Vedic sacrifice, even if such a person is born in as a shwapacha, which means a dog eater, dog cooker. They come from a low background. They can be elevated. Hansapriya.
I don't know if it's...
Okay.
Yes.
In material world, we have this tendency: what is in for me, and what I'm going to get out of it. So here, when you read this, it just struck me that you go into as a Dabir Khas and Sakar Malik, and they are following. They go as just a normal person, but then they're following the process of studying Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and Chaitanya Charitamrita, and they come out as a Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis, and they're Rupanuga. So it's like when I'm investing into something, I want to know what the process is, what the outcome is going to be. So this is the process of this is how if you invest yourself, this is the outcome you're going to get. So I like this, the whole clarity of the journey, what am I going in with and what I'm going to get out of it.
Yes, good point. They set the examples themselves coming out of a situation in which they were considered outcasts in society. They were accepted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then they became the great acharyas of the Gaudiya line. Avantika.
I like that same point Mataji brought up about how this principle of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is ubiquitous or like universal. And I also liked how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could see past their like mundane qualifications and looked at their potential in Krishna consciousness instead.
Yes, it's a nice point. And you'll find that the acharyas following in the footsteps of the Goswamis and of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, like Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, did a similar thing, and bringing everybody under the tent of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and purifying them by the process of chanting the holy name, which is the system for purification. Yes, Dayanidhi Prabhu. Here comes the mic.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, I was thinking several things, but they were reflecting on the Sadastakam, Sad Goswami
Yes.
Astakam. Okay. Well, one is the scrutinizing the scriptures for the benefit of others. And I was thinking how Prabhupada so expertly wrote his purports for the Westerners, for everyone, to really understand the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, whoever understood these scriptures as well as, some of us do now, not me, but with Prabhupada's purports, so expertly he wrote these purports for us. So I was thinking about how he scrutinized himself, he studied his whole life, and then how he wrote these purports are so amazing. I also wrote that pouring out transcendental songs, and I was thinking how amazing and wonderful it is to go on Harinam and to be part of that, of pouring out transcendental songs. So Harinam Ki Jai. I also wrote Giving Up Aristocracy, and how, when I'm doing Uber and I get these very wealthy people in the car all day, and I start to get envious, thinking, God, this guy's making $250,000 a year, and I'm like, why do I care? Why do I care about that? So still one has to practice even if he has no taste. And I also wrote how the six Goswamis were showing us the mood of Vrindavan. That was verse 8. And then you said that that's why we should read the Nectar Devotion, so we could understand the mood of Vrindavan.
Yes, thank you. Such good points. Thank you, Dayanidhi Prabhu. Very helpful. Okay, Lord Chaitanya met the two brothers Dabira Khas and Sakara Malik in a village known as Ramakeli in the district of Malda. And after that meeting, the brothers decided to retire from government service and join Lord Chaitanya. Dabira Khas, who was later to become Rupa Goswami, retired from his post and collected all the money he had accumulated during his service. It is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that his accumulated savings in gold coins equaled millions of dollars and filled a large boat. He divided the money in a very exemplary manner, which should be followed by devotees in particular and humanity in general. 50% of his accumulated wealth was distributed to the Krishna-conscious persons, namely the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas. 25% was distributed to relatives, and 25% was kept against emergency expenditures and personal difficulties. Later on, when Sakara Malik also proposed to retire, the Nawab was very much agitated and put him into jail. But Sakara Malik, who was later to become Srila Rupa Goswami, took advantage of his brother's personal money, which had been deposited with a village banker, and escaped from the prison of Hussain Shah. In this way, both brothers joined Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Rupa Goswami first met Lord Chaitanya at Prayag, Allahabad, India, on the Dashashwamedha bathing ghat. Of that holy city, the Lord instructed him continually for 10 days. The Lord particularly instructed Rupa Goswami in the science of Krishna consciousness. These teachings of Lord Chaitanya to Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada are narrated in our book, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. If you've not read Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, you should probably get a copy and set aside a little time. It starts off fairly simply and becomes more and more esoteric as it goes along. It really reminds me of a PhD thesis. And Prabhupada leaves no detail out in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. It's remarkable, actually. And he did that deliberately because, as he also gave a summary of the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, not being sure how much time he had in the world, because he'd already had 2 heart attacks on the journey over, and he was becoming elderly, and he had this sense of urgency to make sure that the entire canon of Vaishnava literatures is available to people. So he did the summary of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. But there you go. There's the Nectar devotion available today. Oh, it's the TLC. Okay, great. And the teachings of Lord Chaitanya available. I dare say the Nectar devotion also available. But if you want a copy afterwards, then you could, or even now, you can take one. So, yes, I'll continue. Rupa Goswami, later, Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada elaborated the teachings of the Lord with profound knowledge of revealed scriptures and authoritative references from various Vedic literatures. Srila Srinivasa Acharya describes in his prayers to the 6 Goswamis that they were all highly learned scholars, not only in Sanskrit, but also in foreign languages such as Persian and Arabic. They very scrutinizingly studied all the Vedic scriptures in order to establish the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on the authorized principles of Vedic knowledge. The present Krishna consciousness movement is also based on the authority of Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada. We are therefore generally known as Rupanugas, or followers in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada. It is only for our guidance that Srila Rupa Goswami prepared his book, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is now presented in the form of the Nectar of Devotion. Persons engaged in the Krishna consciousness movement may take advantage of this great literature and be solidly situated in Krishna consciousness. Bhakti means devotional service. Every service has some attractive feature which drives the servitor progressively on and on. Every one of us within this world is perpetually engaged in some sort of service, and the impetus for such service is the pleasure we derive from it. Driven by affection for his wife and children, a family man works day and night. A philanthropist works in the same way for love of the greater family, and a nationalist for the cause of his country and countrymen. That force which drives the philanthropist, the householder, and the nationalist is called rasa, or a kind of mellow relationships whose taste is very sweet. Bhakti rasa is a mellow different from the ordinary rasa enjoyed by mundane workers. Mundane workers labor very hard day and night in order to relish a certain kind of rasa, which is understood as sense gratification. The relish or taste of the mundane rasa does not long endure, and therefore mundane workers are always apt to change their position of enjoyment. A businessman is not satisfied by working the whole week, therefore wanting a change for the weekend, he goes to a place where he tries to forget his business activities. Then after the weekend is spent in forgetfulness, he again changes his position and resumes his actual business activities. Material engagement means accepting a particular status for some time and then changing it. This position of changing back and forth is technically known as Bhogatyaga, which means a position of alternating sense enjoyment and renunciation. A living entity cannot steadily remain either in sense enjoyment or renunciation. Change is going on perpetually, and we cannot be happy in either state because of our eternal constitutional position. Sense gratification does not endure for long, and it is therefore called chapala-sukha, or flickering happiness. For example, an ordinary family man who works very hard day and night and is successful in giving comforts to the members of his family, thereby relishes a kind of mellow, but his whole advancement of material happiness immediately terminates along with his body as soon as his life is over. Death is therefore taken as the representative of God for the atheistic class of men. The devotee realizes the presence of God by devotional service, whereas the atheist realizes the presence of God in the shape of death. At death, everything is finished, and one has to begin a new chapter of life in a new situation, perhaps higher or lower than the last one. In any field of activity, political, social, national, or international, the result of our actions will be finished with the end of life. That is sure. What did you hear so far, or in the last section? Yes.
So I understood that for atheists, God is realized by death, by representation as a death, and for devotees, represented in the devotional service. So that is the difference. So atheists, they should wait until the end of life to actually to understand and realize God.
Yeah. In the Gita, Krishna says, Mrityu sarva harashaham. I come ultimately as death and manifest myself. So we notice that when death approaches, there's a reconsideration oftentimes of one's position here in this world, because it's a little bit unsettling, to say the least, the prospect of detaching oneself from all the ideas that one is one's body, that my family is my own. And therefore the Vedic literatures go to great length to help us gain a more realistic perspective of our position in the world. In fact, even Hiranyakashipu, when he was speaking to his family members after the death of Hiranyaka, gave several scenarios to help us understand what is our situation here in this world. One of them is memorable. They're all memorable, but this one is particularly interesting. He said that we're all travelers. Who can deny that? And we end up, like travelers often do, in a place where people drink water or have some kind of beverage, and they start talking to each other. I see it in airports all the time. People go to the lounge, or they're at a restaurant, and they take up conversations talking to one another. They make friends for an hour as they're hanging out, and then they get up and they get on different flights and they go somewhere else. So Hiranyakashipu said this is very similar, synonymous with the way we come into this world. We are connected with family members and think that they're permanent, but actually they're travelers also. And they'll be on their way, and so will we at a certain time, to be announced later. What else did you hear? Dainiti Prabhu and then Shraddha.
I'll start with the last thing I heard. Chapala, which is flickering happiness.
Yeah.
One time I was in Laguna Chapala, Lake Chapala, greeting Srila Puri Maharaj, and he asked what the name of the town was, and we said Chapala. And he goes, Chapala. Ah, that's a very good word. A very good name. I also wrote down that mundane rasa does not endure. And I wrote down, I'm reflecting here, that the service, the impetus for service is for sense gratification. Let me say this again.
You had it. That was good. The impetus for service in the material
is
world.
Sense gratification,
Yeah.
and whether it's personal or extended.
Yes.
And Rupanuga. We're followers of Rupanuga. Krishna consciousness is based on his teachings. And if we follow it, we'll be solidly situated. Those are Prabhupada's words, solidly situated. 50% of our earnings should be given to Krishna consciousness. And we should read the teachings of Lord Chaitanya because Prabhupada's urgency to finish these books. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Very good. Is there anything left for anyone else? He was so complete. Who else had? Oh, Shraddha, go ahead. Thank you. Excellent.
Actually, I had 2 points, and the Aditi Prabhu told the first one.
Okay.
Chapala. I was also going to talk to mention that Krishna presents himself as death to the atheists, and we realize him through devotional service. And I was thinking about the quote that you often make, that there are no atheists in the foxhole.
That's right. Oftentimes, people maintain a hard position against God, but then it's difficult to reconcile at the time when you're leaving the body that there's not a supreme controller, because you feel the weightiness of being asked to vacate this particular body. Yes, Prabhu, and then Avantika.
Just reflecting on this point, Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada elaborated the teachings of the Lord with profound knowledge of revealed scriptures. I was just thinking on how Srila Prabhupada in Srimad Bhagavatam also in the first canto writes that a disciple speaks the same thing, whatever his teacher has taught, but with his own realizations. And Srila Rupa Goswami also is writing here that elaborated the teachings of the Lord. So whatever Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught him, he just elaborated it by adding his own realizations to it.
Excellent point. Let's look at Bhagavatam 1.4.1, and I'll read that purport, in which Prabhupada describes what is the meaning of realization. And if you'll scroll down to the translation, Vyasadeva said, on hearing Suta Goswami speak thus, Shaunaka Muni, who is the elderly, learned leader of all the rishis, engaged in that prolonged sacrificial ceremony, congratulated Suta Goswami by addressing him as follows. Purport. In a meeting of learned men, when there are congratulations or addresses for the speaker, the qualifications of the congratulator should be as follows. He must be the leader of the house and an elderly man. He must be vastly learned also. Sri Shaunaka Rishi had all these qualifications, and thus he stood up to congratulate Sri Suta Goswami when he expressed his desire to present Srimad Bhagavatam exactly as he heard it from Shukadeva Goswami, and also realized it personally. Personal realization does not mean that one should, out of vanity, attempt to show one's own learning by trying to surpass the previous acharya. He must have full confidence in the previous acharya, and at the same time he must realize the subject matter so nicely that he can present the matter for the particular circumstances in a suitable manner. The original purpose of the text must be maintained. No obscure meaning should be screwed out of it. Yet it should be presented in an interesting manner for the understanding of the audience. This is called realization. The leader of the assembly, Shaunaka, could estimate the value of the speaker, Sri Suta Goswami, simply by his uttering yataditam and yatamati, and therefore he was very glad to congratulate him in ecstasy. No learned man should be willing to hear a person who does not represent the original acharya. So the speaker and the audience were bona fide in this meeting, where Bhagavatam was being recited for the second time. That should be the standard of recitation of Bhagavatam, so that real purpose can be served without difficulty. Unless this situation is created, Bhagavatam recitation for extraneous purposes is useless labor, both for the speaker and for the audience. Bringing to light this principle of what Prabhupada calls realization means that one should very carefully, scrutinizingly follow the teachings of the previous acharyas and not try to supersede and say, I've learned something more, here's something new. But at the same time, one should represent it in a way that's relevant. to the audience so that they can understand it. This requires that one's realized the actual import of the teachings, him or herself, and is able to present it. You'll find that when you have a personal realization, even if it's simple, when you present that in your preaching of Krishna consciousness to others, it'll have a greater impact. It's genuine and it's come from a place of realization. And therefore, it's important for those who are practicing Krishna consciousness and teaching it to others to be following and getting their own realizations and then representing them in the context of the teachings of the acharyas. Vantika.
I liked it when Prabhupada was like contrasting between material happiness and spiritual happiness. Like we can see how like the material joy or like the gratification we derive from material things are a lot more evanescent, like they'll constantly come and go, whereas spiritual happiness is at another platform.
What is the word you used?
Evanescent.
Evanescent. And the other one you had was ubiquitous.
Oh, yeah.
And evanescent.
Vocab words.
These are good. Thank you very much. In the Gita, Krishna says, Yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate adyantavanta konteya nate shuramate buddha. He says that a person who is intelligent doesn't take part in the sources of misery, which are interaction of the senses with their objects. And of course, this doesn't mean that you don't move around and eat and sleep, but it means that that's not the goal of your life, the titillation of the senses, because he says something very profound here, and that is, if you are after that, then that is the source of misery. Yehi samsparshaja bhoga. Sparshaja means the contact of the senses and their objects in a tactile way. Dukkha yonaya evate. So yonaya means the womb. And what's born from the womb when one is interested in sense gratification is duk. A little child comes out named Duki to give you all kinds of misery. So that's what's born from sense gratification and the intention to enjoy the material world. And therefore, na teshu ramate. Ramate means to enjoy Buddha. And a Buddha or an intelligent person doesn't indulge in this wanton sense gratification because he or she knows that the result is duk, misery. Anything else? Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. I observed the point where Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, they scrutinizedly reviewed the Vedic scriptures to establish the cult of Mahaprabhu. So it basically brought up the point that this is based on very strong and solid philosophy, the teachings that we follow.
And this may not be evident to people unless the acharyas like Rupa and Sanatan Goswami brought it to light. For instance, there are verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Itam nritirya grishi jeva jasha avatarar. This verse from Prahlad Maharaj, where he describes the incarnations, how the Lord appears in various incarnations, and he proclaims that in Kali Yuga there's a Chana avatar. Chana means covered. So this is not fully evident to a casual reader that this is referring to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who came as a devotee. He didn't come as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is one example how the Goswamis would go through and, forgive the phrase, connect the dots, so that anyone could understand how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In fact, you'll find the details in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita. Do we have them? You have Laghu Bhagavatamrita? Or can we have those too? You can take your full Goswami set tonight. Laghu Bhagavatamrita is an extraordinarily important book and very interesting to read. The first part is a little bit slow going. It's very technical, but you'll see as you continue, the rewards are great. Here is an example of the way in which Rupa Goswami ties up all the loose ends and explains exactly the philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For instance, he goes through the Shastras and describes in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita how in the various cycles of yugas, the Lord appears in a scheduled way in order to execute the yuga dharma. In Kali Yuga, normally an empowered living entity, a jiva, appears to enact the yuga dharma. However, in this particular Kali Yuga, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for his own purposes, appeared himself. Look at that beautiful book, Laghu Bhagavatamrita. All these available tonight. But you got to get them before 8 o'clock. So make sure you can fill out a little chit. See, we already got one here. This was a book order from Ramananda Saka Prabhu. So if you want any of these books, you just write it on a little chit and put it with your name here, which book you want and how many in quantity. This is Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu. He was a great genius and a pure devotee. Unfortunately, he left us quite early. And nonetheless, it makes the work that he did even more rare. But there it is, the Laghu Bhagavatamrita, perfectly edited by the BBT. And as I was saying, an example of the way in which all the Vedic literatures are brought to bear, and the philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu perfectly harmonized and taught through the pen of Srila Rupa Goswami. So yes, that's what they did, and without that, we would have very little standing. In fact, Prabhupada mentioned many times that the Krishna consciousness movement would not have the standing that it does without our literature. This is what distinguishes us from other religious groups, and it's extremely important. The framework of the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is all there within the Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, etc.
I was also thinking that in the same lines, even the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnaraj Kaviraj Goswami, I think in the initial chapters he presents so many points to prove that Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of God, and he also mentions that verse Siddhanta Boliya Chite, what Nakaro Alvash, Iya Hoite. I just forget. Shudira Manush, yeah. So just like, he says that one should not neglect the conclusions of all these the Vedic scriptures, because it strengthens. Even though they may be controversial, they may appear controversial, we should not neglect them, because that's how you can strengthen the mind. So.
There's a lot of hearing and chanting going on in your household, I can tell. Nice. These are excellent points. Of course, Chaitanya Charitamrita is really a garland of verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam, in which the Kaviraj Goswami is proving the philosophy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as well as giving the history. And this is an important point he makes in the Adi Lila, that one has to understand how it is that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Otherwise, how will your mind be sudhrida? He says, sudhrida manash. It will be fixed. You'll be fixed in service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead if you understand that he actually is. And if not, and you're just going by cultural momentum or imitation or something like that, you won't be as resolute. So siddhanta means not just what something is, but also what it isn't. You have to be very precise. When you're sharpening an axe, you sharpen both sides. And therefore, in the presentation, even in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the section you just cited, Kaviraj Goswami presents other arguments about how other incarnations of the Lord, like he says, some people say Vamana is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Others cite other incarnations. He said these are not incorrect, because ultimately the Supreme is the Supreme. Departure eva hida shantanama bipetya dipayate virvata hetu samana dharma. Yastadrageva hija vishnu chaya vibhati govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Brahma says that all of the various incarnations have the same potency. nonetheless, there is an original Supreme Personality of Godhead. But he then comes back to the Shastra, and the point made in the third chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Eti cham shakala pumsam krishnastu bhagavan swayam indrari tam lokam hridayanti yuge yuge. That there is a list of all the various incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead given in the Srimad Bhagavatam, but why isn't Krishna mentioned there? Why isn't he? Because he's the avatari, he's not an avatar, but he's an avatari. He's the source of all the other avatars. And this is one of the key points around which the Goswamis build their entire philosophy to present from the Srimad Bhagavatam that Krishna is Bhagavan, the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. And also through the science of rasa, because there's a way in which Krishna has more qualities than other avatars of God, and his relationships are deeper and sweeter and more varied. And from that point of view of rasa also, he's the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're continuing. I have no idea where we are, but I think there it is. Bhakti rasa, however, is the mellow relished. Is everyone okay? You like hearing, just hearing like this? Okay, 3 people do. Bhakti rasa, however, the mellow relished in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, does not finish with the end of life. It continues perpetually and is therefore called amrita, that which does not die but which exists eternally. This is confirmed in all Vedic literatures. Bhagavad Gita says that a little advancement in bhakti rasa can save the devotee from the greatest danger, that of missing the opportunity for human life. The rasas derived from our feelings in social life, in family life, or the greater family life of altruism, philanthropy, nationalism, socialism, communism, etc., do not guarantee that one's next life will be as a human being. We prepare our next life by our actual activities in the present life. A living entity is offered a particular type of body as a result of his action in the present body. These activities are taken into account by a superior authority known as Daiva, or the authority of God. This Daiva is explained in Bhagavad Gita as the prime cause of everything. And in Srimad Bhagavatam it is stated that a man takes his next body by Daiva Netrina, which means by the supervision of the authority of the Supreme. In an ordinary sense, Daiva is explained as destiny. Daiva supervision gives us a body selected from 8,400,000 forms. The choice does not depend on our selection, but is awarded to us according to our destiny. If our body at present is engaged in the activities of Krishna consciousness, then it is guaranteed that we will have at least a human body in our next life. A human being engaged in Krishna consciousness, even if unable to complete the course of Bhakti Yoga, takes birth in the higher divisions of human society so that he can automatically further his advancement in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, all bona fide activities in Krishna consciousness are amrita, or permanent. This is the subject matter of the Nectar of Devotion. Let me know if you have any questions as we go forward. Yes, Prabhu. We'll provide you with a microphone.
What does it mean when Prabhupada says takes birth in the higher divisions of human society?
It means
so that he automatically
yeah, that's a good question, and I'll give you the citation from the Gita. It comes in the 6th chapter of the Gita, and these are some of the most astounding verses that you'll find in the Gita, stimulating. I find that when people hear this, especially those who have suddenly become stimulated by the idea of being Krishna conscious, you know when that happens? And suddenly that becomes your main focus in life, and you think, why didn't I think of this before? Well, here Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita, starting with the 6th chapter, 42nd verse. Actually, we'll go back even to 40. And here, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Sanaprita, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities, one of my favorite verses, does not meet with destruction either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. The unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. You see, there's a way in which if someone's practiced yoga for a long time and become very advanced, and then they don't make it, either they fall away or they die before they've made it to the goal, then what happens is they're born in higher planetary systems, and then they take birth again here at ISV. Means they're born into a devotee family. Like I watch the kids here that are born, and they just they come right out into a kirtan. I mean, like they're hearing Bhagavatam. The parents are distributing Bhagavatam. They're hearing kirtan in the womb, and then they come out, and it's just like they're immediately engaged in pure devotional service. So that's the sign Krishna's saying somebody practiced yoga for a long time in their last life. And so then he continues, he says, or if unsuccessful after a long period of yoga, the short one means that they take their birth in a family that's got facility so they can take it up. Because they weren't that connected, just a little connected. So then they get, like, it's not coming out of the womb and then it's like, hey, here's your rickshaw, get going, There's leisure time, and there's a likelihood, like Prabhupada was saying, that there's some opportunity for taking to spiritual life and things like that. But in number 42, if unsuccessful after long practice of yoga, he takes his birth in a family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom. Certainly such a birth is rare in this world. On taking such a birth, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life. And he again tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success. Here's the big one, 44. By virtue of the divine consciousness of his previous life, he automatically becomes attracted to the yogic principles, even without seeking them. Such an inquisitive transcendentalist stands always above the ritualistic principles of the scriptures. So this is described by Krishna very precisely, how the person who's practiced for some time continues. That's why it's called Amrita in this section of the nectar of devotion, that's never broken. Neha bikramanashosti pratyavayo navidyate swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Prabhupada referred to that verse in the last paragraph. It's from the Bhagavad Gita 240, and there Krishna says, Swalpamapyasya dharmasya. If you do a little bit of devotional service, even if it's su alpam, means tiny, tiny, then that's accounted. You have a slight inclination towards devotional service, or just do an iota of practice, then it starts you on the path, and that's going to come to bear at a future time. It'll fructify. It's like a seed, and it will grow later on. Thank you for your question. It's excellent. Any other questions? Okay. Keep hearing and chanting till there's questions. Questions are harder than reflections. This eternal engagement in bhakti rasa can be understood by a serious student upon studying the nectar of devotion. What can be understood by a serious student studying the nectar of devotion? Bhakti rasa, yeah. The adoption of bhakti rasa or Krishna consciousness will immediately bring one to an auspicious life free from anxieties and will bless one with transcendental existence, thus minimizing the value of liberation. Bhakti rasa itself is sufficient to produce a feeling of liberation because it attracts the attention of the Supreme Lord Krishna. Generally, neophyte devotees are anxious to see Krishna or God, but God cannot be seen or known by our present materially blunt senses. The process of devotional service, as it is recommended in the Nectar of Devotion, will gradually elevate one from the material condition of life to the spiritual status, wherein the devotee becomes purified of all designations. designations means, they're in Sanskrit, it's called upadis. And the example of an upadi is given by Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where he says, if you take a clear crystal and you put next to it a red rose, what color will the clear crystal be then? Red, so that's an upadi. The crystal is not actually red, but because it's got a red rose next to it, it turns red. So in the same way, the soul is by nature pure. But when we get associated with the modes of material nature, sattva, rajas, and tamas, we appear to take on those qualities. Although actually we never mix with those, just like the crystal never actually mixes with the rose. It does take on that color. So in the Gita, Krishna says, Purusha prakritisto hi bhunkte prakriti jan gunan, karanam guna sangosya sarasad yoni janmasu. All the apparent good and bad situations we find ourselves in this material world are due to various upadis, or false designations. I'm actually internal spirit soul, but I identify myself with a various combination of the modes of material nature. And I say, like, I like jazz. And somebody else says, no, I like what? Blues. I like to sing the blues. And this comes about by association. You like it because you associated with somebody who liked it, and therefore you took on that upadi, that this is what I like, because it's a taste in the modes of material nature. But bhakti rasa, or the taste, that, of course, some people then conclude that the real spiritual life means no taste, no seeing, no hearing, nothing, just quiet and shanti, 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 and there's nothing. But actually, this is not, one speculated oneself right out of a job there, because actually our eternal occupation is to serve Krishna. And there is a rasa, which means there's a taste. Just as we get a taste in this world from our relationships, this is where our real taste comes from. What we're all seeking is various relationships. There's real relationships in the spiritual world with Krishna, or even in this world with Krishna. Yes. Please, not at all.
Is it bad to seek liberation, to seek liberation from the cycle of birth and death? Because here it kind of indicates that the liberation becomes minimal when you...
it's minimized, yes. And here's the reason, because mukti is within bhakti. Bhakti is not within mukti, but mukti, liberation, is already there in bhakti. It's natural. You're naturally liberated when you take to bhakti. And Prabodhananda Saraswati says that bhaktis tvayi stirataya bhagavan yadi syad daivena na divya kishore murti mukti swayam mukulitanjali sevatesman dharmarta kama gatayo yataya. Last word? The tiksha. Pratiksha. So this verse by Prabodhananda Saraswati frames it perfectly, because he gives it poetically, and he says, when I practice bhakti, then mukti, he personifies her as a goddess. She comes to my door as a servant. So by taking to bhakti, then he says everything else will come naturally. Mukti will be there. He says, how can I serve you? And then he says, dharma, artha, kama. If you want sense gratification, dharma, artha, all the so-called rewards of the material world, they're automatically available. Krishna says the same thing in the Bhagavad Gita, in the last verse of the 8th chapter, Vedeshu yagyeshu tapasu chaiva daneshu yat punya palam pratishtam atyeti tat sarvam idam baditva yogi param stanam upaiti chadyam. He says the people who take to devotional service, they're not devoid of anything. Vedeshu, yagyeshu, tapasu, studying the Vedas, performing austerities, doing yagyas. All these things that people enact in order to find some kind of happiness in the material world, elevation to a higher position, the knowledge and all these things, they're all there within bhakti. So he said, if you serve me, then naturally all these things will come as concomitants. And actually, this idea that the Vaishnavas have, they sort of really play on this heavily about mukti. And part of it is because of the history of the way personalists and impersonalists are always fighting with one another. And the impersonalist's main goal in life is mukti, whereas the Vaishnavas will say that this is kind of a suicide, that why you want to kill yourself, because actually your real life is in serving Krishna eternally. And this came up. You remember Radhika Raman Prabhu told the story of how some acharya came to Rupa Goswami and he says, how can you say such heavy things about mukti? And Rupa Goswami was not into debate. He was into Krishna consciousness and writing books and everything. So he said, no problem. But Jiva Goswami then later on, he took this scholar to task and he told him, you don't know what you're talking about, and explained to him the position of mukti. Later on, Rupa found out and banished Jiva Goswami to go live in a crocodile hole somewhere and outside of Vrindavan. And he later brought him back, but he chastised him for taking up that debate. But the point is that it's always been there, this idea. The Goswamis and the other Vaishnavacharyas will point out that actually mukti is something abhorrent because one loses the bhakti rasa. And it's also provable, as we just did through the Bhagavad Gita and so forth, that if you take the bhakti, naturally mukti will come. Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janaya Yashuvairagyam Jnanam Chayara Haitukam. When you take to pure devotional service, naturally all the concomitants are there as well. They come naturally. Did that help? Okay. Yes.
Could you explain a little bit more about the modes of material nature, Prabhu, we were just discussing? So I know that the mind acts different ways, and it's influenced by the three modes. So are they like those Wi-Fi networks that if you connect, you get connected to the modes? Because I've heard in a lecture that morning it's mode of goodness, afternoon is mode of passion, at night it's mode of ignorance. But my understanding is there are some people who are in mode of goodness all day. And is that they actually, is all the three modes always available around us and we pick what we want depending on what we do? And also, how can we actually...
Wait, one question at a time. Well, Prabhupada once told Pradyumna. Pradyumna asked Prabhupada. Pradyumna was Prabhupada's Sanskrit editor and one of them. And so he traveled with Prabhupada as he was doing his books. He was part of his team. And he's a great scholar. He still lives in New York. And so Pradyumna asked Prabhupada once about Jyotish, and said, which is the study of the modes of material nature in one aspect, and is it part of our Siddhanta? And Prabhupada said, no, it's not part of our Siddhanta. He said, but if you know it's going to rain, you take an umbrella. If you have some indication. So, although, Krishna mentions this in the end of the 8th chapter as well, because he says that there are a way in which some yogis, scholars, they conduct themselves in such a way that they can leave the world at a particular time. And Krishna gives us clear information that sometimes are favorable, sometimes are unfavorable. There's a darkness at some time, there's a lightness at some times. These are all considerations of the combinations and permutations of the three modes of material nature. But then he says the devotees, they really don't calculate these things so much. He says, because they're just engaged in my service and they depend on me at those times. So that's much what Prabhupada said also. However, there is a system that we follow, and it has a logical connection with the fact that, in the morning time before the sun rises, the practice is much more favorable. There's a time every day when practice is more favorable. And then there's a time every month, or twice a month during Ekadashi. It's more favorable. And there's a lot of science behind that. And then there's times during the year that are most favorable, like Kartik time, extra credit. Times in your life are most favorable, right near the end. And so these devotees are, although they, they fully depend on Krishna, they also don't completely ignore these other factors. They take advantage of those things because the mode of goodness is more prominent early in the morning. Just test it out and see how hard it is to chant your rounds in the afternoon. In the morning, unless, of course, nowadays it's harder because if you're connected to people overseas, they're just waking up, or they're just, it's nighttime in India. They're texting you, it's like, hey, during the morning time. So, but it's a fact that there are times during the day that are better for the practice, for certain kinds of practices. So we follow that system, right? Yeah. Did you have a second question?
Prabhu, I was just thinking that, so how does the modes act? What is it exactly? Is it, because it is influencing every living entity.
Yes.
So
it's Krishna's energy. And it is, when Krishna glances over the material nature, which is in a neutral state, then it gets activated. And he puts through his glance, he puts his time energy into effect. And then it starts to go through various algorithms. And those algorithms then start to act in various ways. And one of them that was just mentioned was the destiny, point of destiny is mentioned in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, just in a general way. Sutta Goswami says, Asau gunamayer bhaver bhuta sukshmendrayatmabi sva nirmiteshu nirvishto bhunkte bhuteshu tadgunan. He says that the living entity, when he comes out into the material nature, after being absorbed in the body of Mahavishnu, after many, many kalpas, then the Lord then enters within his heart and reminds him of which modes of material nature he had appreciated in his last life. And then the Lord also makes the arrangement so that he can taste those modes again. So the living entity has its own relationship with the three modes of material nature, which are controlled by the time energy of the Lord. So the Lord's indirectly controlling the material world, but he doesn't have anything to do with it. As he says in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 5th chapter, he describes how, although the living entities have this relationship with the three modes of material nature, and they're accruing karma and also pious activities, pious credits, he said, I don't have anything to do with that. That's actually their relationship with the three modes of material nature. And what he wants is that the living entities come to the point of knowledge so that they can extricate themselves from their intimate relationship with the modes and trying to taste the modes. Jnana Yajnana, no. What is that verse? Just after those two? Jnana Yajnana. Yeah, that's not it. 5th chapter, 12th verse? 5. What is it? Number. What is the number? 5 what? Yeah, here it is. 14 and 15. In the 5th chapter, Krishna says, the embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. 15, nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. And then this is the verse I was looking for. Jnanena tutadagyanam yesham nashitam atmana tesham adityavajnanam prakashayati tatparam. When, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. Was that the second part? You already got the second question out, right? Okay. Any other things? Okay. 1, 2.
Things down because I can't remember. Okay. 2 seconds ago. So my question is it says a person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft. So can you explain, because, it seems like there's all different levels of accepting the path. So do you know my question?
Well, this is a very good point, because actually one may ask, what is a pure devotee and what is the qualification and so forth. But one who accepts the path of devotional service is actually in a very high position. So there's many paths you can accept. But the point is that even if you're not perfect, when you take to the path of devotional service, and who would be coming out of the material world unless you're some kind of avatar, the fact is that you will become perfect. Now, Krishna mentions the efficacy of devotional service when he says, Api chet sudaracharo bhajate mamananya bhak sadureva samantavya samgyag vyavasito hisa. That if you've accepted the path of devotional service, even though you're still engaged in worldly activities, that's sudarachara, means you're worldly minded, you're still connected, you can't give it up. Jnanishvara, you don't have the power to extricate yourself from sense gratification even though you know it's not the right thing. Still, he says that person's a sadhu. Krishna claims sadhu, because that person is properly situated, which means they've accepted the path of devotional service. So you may notice somebody who looks externally down and out in the material world, but when you talk to them and comes their time to speak, as you're taking prasadam, they don't say Krishna is a thing, they say Krishna is the thing. That's the difference. There's a lot of people who go around saying, yeah, Krishna is a thing. But the person who's properly situated is saying Krishna is the thing. And devotional service is the thing. That's what it means to be on the path of devotional service. Just to get to that point requires a spiritual evolution which is quite exalted, or coming to the point of exaltation after an evolution. And so many different years and association with sadhus brings one to that position of having faith, shraddha. Shraddha shabde bishwas kahe sudridhanishchoy krishne bhakti koila sarva karma krita hoy. One who thinks like this, that bhakti is everything, and that everything's done by bhakti. Sarva karma krita hoy. Everything will be done if I do bhakti. Liberation comes, all the things Krishna says, I don't have to do anything else. I just have to depend on Krishna. And what's more, such a person, if he looks like he's engaged in renunciation, the only renunciation of the bhakta is giving up things that are unfavorable and accepting things that are favorable. Sometimes Krishna says, eat more, and then you have to, that's your renunciation, you have to enjoy. Because Krishna gives prasad, and he says, you take. Or the sadhu says, no, eat, don't fast. And you go like, I always fast. And they go like, no, you eat, then you eat. Because that's pleasing to Krishna, because you follow the sadhu. So that's the path of bhakti. We're not into renunciation for its own sake. We don't enjoy for its own sake. We enjoy, if Krishna says enjoy, that's our enjoyment. We enjoy on his order. So somebody who has that kind of faith, that person is properly situated. And it doesn't matter if they're perfect yet or not in their practice or application of it. It just matters that their faith is properly situated. Because then in the next verse, after Api Chet, Krishna says, Shri Pram Bhavati Dharmatma, Shashvash Shantim Nagashati, Konteya Pratijani Hiname Bhaktya Pranashati. He says very quickly, this person, Arjuna, you say it. He's saying to Arjuna, you say it, because not everyone will believe me. Because sometimes to support my devotee, I'll tell some lie. Because I love my devotees more than I love myself or my reputation. Therefore he said, Arjuna, everyone believes the devotee, so you say that the devotee will be, without doubt, will be delivered by the process of devotional service. Shri Pram Bhavati Dharmatma Shashvash Shantim Nagashati Kontiya Pratidanihi Nami Bhakti Pranashati. And my devotee is never vanquished. It's very much like Nahi Kalyana Krit Kashchit we heard earlier. As Prabhupada's godbrother B.R. Sridhar Maharaj used to say, that sincerity is infallible. If you're sincere, then Krishna knows it, and he'll help you to come to the perfect stage of life. Yes, Prabhu. Oh, you had a question. You were next. Yes.
So, Prabhu, my question may be very basic because I'm beginning in the devotional practice, right? So, We all, as you, in your previous explanation, you were mentioning that there are some times where you cannot extricate yourself from the material world, right? Like you have duties to perform, you have relationships to manage, you have many things in the world which you need to do, and yet you have to do the devotional service. My question is, I've been reading Gita, and in several places, Prabhupada says that like the individual is like the atomic or the minuscule reflection of the Supreme, right? So my question is it right to pursue that devotion whereby you worship the person or the relationship or the work or whatever you have to do as the service to Krishna? Like if you have a child, and is it okay to do duties toward the child or any relationship for that matter as a service to Krishna?
Serve your child as service to Krishna?
Yes.
Well, it kind of depends, really. For instance, the gopis in Vrindavan, who are the highest of servitors of Krishna, according to our Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy, worship demigods. But why were they worshiping demigods? They were praying to the demigods, please let me, well, first of all, the young unmarried gopi girls would say that I want to be Krishna's wife. I just want to marry Krishna, nobody else. Rukmini, same thing. She didn't want to marry Shishupal, so she went, as usual, during the day of the wedding to Durga Devi, and she was praying, I just want Krishna as my husband. So if you go to the Devas, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, he says people who are less intelligent. Hrityajnana, it means they've lost their intelligence, they worship Devas. But here we find that the great exalted devotees are worshipping Devas. So the point then is that if one is worshipping the Devas as an example to increase one's bhakti for Krishna and to perfect one's devotional service, nothing illegal about that. And similarly, all the aspects of our life must be connected to Krishna, because it's natural as human beings that we have a life and that we'll have responsibilities to do. For instance, raising children. So when you raise a child, there's a duty to do, which is to help the child become Krishna conscious. So the Bhagavatam says one should not become a spiritual master or a father or a demigod or any kind of leader unless one is able to deliver his dependents from the mire of birth and death and help connect them to Krishna. So when the purpose is properly established, as we'll find in the, may I have 10th canto, 14th chapter? Within 7 seconds or less. The Sutta Goswami speaks about, could you find me the verse too? That the residents, it's Brahma's Prayers, chapter 14, where he says that the residents of Vrindavan, that the home is foot shackles. Yeah, you know the verse. In this verse, which Mukharvinda will produce soon, 14th chapter. Thank you. We have this statement by Brahma. He says, Tavat, this is 10:14:36. Tavat ragadayas tavat karagraham graham tavan mohon nigado yavat Krishna natejanaha. My dear Lord Krishna, until people become your devotees, their material attachments and desires remain thieves. Their homes remain prisons, and their affectionate feelings for their family members remain foot shackles. So now, like, look at the residents of Vrindavan that he's speaking about here. They all have family members. They have pots and pans and houses and cows and everything like that. But because everything's centered around Krishna, then this is not a problem. to say the least. But if somebody's self-centered and they're thinking that in the bodily conception of life, then Krishna mentions this in his teachings in the Bhagavatam. He says, "Sa eva gokura." How's that verse start? Huh? I can't hear from there. Could you say it again? First word. Yasyatma buddhi kunapetra dhatuke sadi kalatradi shubhoma ijidi yatirtha buddhi salilena karichit jnanishu. Last word? Abhigeshu saeva gokara. So this verse by Krishna where he says that a person who considers that the body made of these three things, mucus, bile, and air, this is myself. And a person who worships his homeland as a place of pilgrimage, because I'm there. Like Ross Perot, he was a presidential candidate years ago. You're all so young, you probably don't remember any of these things. You're lucky. Ross Perot, he was a billionaire, ran for president. And he went back to his hometown, and the little brick house he grew up in had been painted on the outside, so he paid like millions of dollars to have all the bricks turned around, because it's a worshipable place, of course. And Krishna says that these materialistic kind of connections with family members, with self and so forth, there's a differentiation there that these people are like animals. They're just attached. And so it's service in that mentality that this is my beloved family, it's connected to my body, and therefore it's special. Everybody's child's special to them. Even Dayanidhi Prabhu will tell you that a mother hawk will protect her little baby hawks. He almost got his head taken off the other day with a hawk protecting her little baby hawks. That's nothing special. I mean, it is special if you look at it in a very existential way, but actually it's just normal in the material world. But what's special is if somebody's dedicated to Krishna, and therefore if they're raising children, they're dedicated to raising the children in Krishna consciousness, then it becomes special. So it's the consciousness in which it's done that's important.
So in other words, to extend that example, like anything we do in the world, and most of us have things to do, like, we have to go to a work, we have to deal with traffic, we have to deal with politics in workplace. We have to somehow ignore the fluff and fix the mind on Krishna, and thereby will that be a good way to consider that as a devotional service?
That's Krishna's order in the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where he says, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mama nusmara yudyacha mayarpita mano buddhir mami vaishasya samshayaha. That he says, therefore, because he's saying how important it is to remember him, because at the time of death, whatever you're attracted to, wherever your mind goes, you'll take birth in that situations. He says, Tasmat, therefore, sarveshu kaleshu, while you're in the world working, he said, you should always remember me. And Prabhupada mentions there that the best way to do that is to chant Hare Krishna and practice that. So yes, that's the process. And he also says in the 8th, Prabhupada, 18th chapter of the Gita, that when you're doing your work, you should consider, Krishna has given me this work, I'm working on his behalf. But if you really want it to stick, then you should give the fruits of your labor. Just like my friend Madhava Maharaj, one day we were walking around Vrindavan, we lived in Vrindavan, we'd circumambulate the city every morning, and so we were walking by. I was in a hurry, I was tired. He wanted to go off the track as usual and visit some tree. And I said, I'll just do it by meditation. He said, that's fine, as long as when we get back you take prasadam by meditation too. And so there's a way in which, when you actually sacrifice the fruits of your work to Krishna, then you really start feeling it. Like Jayananda Prabhu, his disappearance day was celebrated recently. He was a great saint, known as one of the saints of the Krishna consciousness movement. When he joined Krishna consciousness, he went on driving a cab. A lot of young people came and they said, oh, good, I get to be a renunciate now. And Prabhupada said, no, go work. We need money. How are we going to spread Krishna consciousness? So he went back and drove a cab. And he was driving cab, And while he was doing it, he put a book in the back seat, and people would get in the car, and they go, "Oh, there's a book in the back seat." And it was, "Yeah, go ahead, take a look." He was selling books to all his fares, whoever got in. And he gave all the money. He gave all the money. Whatever he earned, he would give it. In fact, all the householders did that. I mean, householders lived like brahmacharis do now, back in the old days. It was a very simple way of life, living at the temple and so forth. So anyway, the more you're able to do that, then you'll feel the connection, because oftentimes your mind follows the money. If you put all your money in that hundi, you'll go to bed tonight with your mind stuck to the altar. Where's all my money? Where'd you put all our money? It's at the temple. Then your whole family will be like, "You put it where?" It's in that box.
So just to summarize, until we get to that perfection, it's okay to keep doing these worldly things, but fix the mind on Krishna and offer that as devotional service to Krishna.
It's all perfection as one's engaged and properly in Krishna's service. It's not that perfection means renunciation, because devotional service is neither about renunciation nor is it about enjoyment, but it's about dedication. So whatever position of life one's in, if one's dedicating one's activities and mind service to Krishna, then that's perfect.
Thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome. Of course, we go through different... Who else? Was somebody else? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. We come across these two words, mukti as well as moksha. So is there a difference between the two, because both are translated as liberation?
Not really. They're used interchangeably in various places. Means basically the same thing. Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
In 1436, there was a very powerful line that kind of struck me, affectionate feelings for your family members remain as foot shackles. So I was wondering, like, from that sentence, like, is there in a I'm not sure what is the right word for it, but is there a relationship between two souls? Is there a concept of relationship between two souls, or it's just between like Krishna and you?
Yeah, there is a relationship. I mean, we do have relationships in this world, correct? Right. So one way in which this is spoken about in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's in the 7th canto, is Varnashrama. And there are relationships and ways of dealing with all the people around you who are parts of your family and part of the society and so forth that are harmonious with the practice of devotional service. So one of the ways, as an example, that is described by Narada Muni to Yudhishthira in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is that, let's say somebody has a family person, and also get me a 5th canto in the teaching of Rishabdev about Grahastha Ashram. It's in 5.5. You'll see it. And what was I talking about before I interrupted myself? Yeah, in the 7th canto, one more sold here. Good. Others who want these, you fill it out with him. He'll take your order. Yes, he says, as an example, for instance, a man with his family. Never should he, a grahastha, be cold towards his family, thinking that I should be renounced, but I'm encumbered with all these family members, therefore I'll give them a cold shoulder emotionally. He said, rather, one should realize that these are other living beings. They have emotional needs. They're connected to me, at least externally. And therefore, one should give full emotional support and play the role of a good father, a good husband, a wife, and so forth. But internally, one should have some realization that actually, in an existential sense, we're all just passing through. And, as we said earlier, even Hiranyakashipu said, one family member is going to go this way and the other one's going to catch another plane going the other direction. both things are going on at the same time. Because we have two parts to our existence. One is called Vyavaharika, it means the practical way in which we interact with the world, and the other is called Paramartika, which is our ultimate goal of life. So we have to do that dance, and the two things have to go on simultaneously. The devotees, even you'll see in this world, devotees have relationships, and they're loving relationships. That's why Rupa Goswami talks about it in the Nectar of Instruction. Dadati pratugunati guhyamakyati prichiti punkte bojayate chaiva. Correct. So loving relationships go on between devotees. They're living entities. They have loving relationships among themselves because devotees are dear to Krishna, and therefore devotees are dear to other devotees as well in that relationship where Krishna is in the center. And as far as other living entities go, the Bhagavatam describes how one should interact with various entities in this world. Verse 11th canto. Balisheshu dusatsucha, first line. Ishvare taradineshu balisheshu dusatsucha prema maitri kripopeksha yakaroti samadhyamaha. A devotee interacts with people according to their position in the world. For instance, he sees that there are people who are innocent. And for the innocents, he takes a lot of time and care to pour in as much mercy as possible. And for those who are averse to Krishna consciousness, the person is asked to avoid them. That's his relationship. That's his kindness. He avoids them so they don't become more envious. And therefore, and with the devotees, Tadadineshu, the devotees, he makes friendships, proper friendships. So yes, there's friendships, there's all kinds of relationships between living entities, and it's all centered around Krishna. Otherwise, it's that's why we call people relatives in the material world. It's all relative. It's just like, it's real. It's not real. It's relative. But the fact is that, who's that? That's my relatives. Relative to what? They're just temporarily passing through. I call him my father, but actually, people have fathers, stepfathers, stepsons, sons, all kinds of relatives. You all have a lot of cousins and stuff. And, it's like, who are all these people anyway? And how come you have to buy a present for every one of them during Diwali? And why not everybody in Delhi? Or because these are my relatives. I'm connected with them somehow, but not really. It's just a kind of as Prabhupada said, a colossal hoax. You're playing a game. 5-5, yeah. Sorry. So just one other piece of evidence here from Lord Rishabhadev's teachings about a householder in the material world. He says, the text number 3, those who are interested in reviving Krishna consciousness and increasing their love of Godhead do not like to do anything that is not related to Krishna. They are not interested in mingling with people who are busy maintaining their bodies, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. They are not attached to their homes, although they may be householders, nor are they attached to wives, children, friends, or wealth. At the same time, they are not indifferent to the execution of their duties. Such people are interested in collecting only enough money to keep the body and the soul together. So this is the instruction of Rishabhadev, how one should, externally, you're not indifferent to your duty, but internally, you have this awareness that, we're just here together to help each other become Krishna conscious. Now we just have a couple minutes for a little kirtan. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Shri Mate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare three. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Everybody. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki, Srila Rupa Goswami ki, Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki, Gaur Premanande. I have a really plane to catch. Please forgive me. But I'll see you, or a lot of you, in Sadhu Sangha. And if not, we'll be back next Sunday in time to see His Holiness Indradyumna Swami here. We have to go to Sadhu Sangha, then to North Carolina temples, and then to Denver. And we'll be back here Sunday, Krishna willing. And Bhadra Purnima is coming up. That was the poster you saw right here. Take these Goswami literatures and worship them in your house. And we'll see you very, very soon, and thank you very much. Vancha kalpadrivascha kripasindave vacha patitanam pavanibhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha nantakoti vaishnaviniki jai go premanande haribol.